of us, and already crowd looking pretty full up. TSM fans, Gigabyte Marines fans, all aside. Hello, everyone. I'm Daniel Drake. And taking over the analyst desk with me today is Zach Rusty Pie and James Tresselier. How do you feel?
Fantastic. Happy to be here.
Yeah, feeling great. Welcome to you.
Yeah, I've been watching from behind the scenes. Now I've taken the shocks, the dash training. Now I'm here on the desk for you guys. But of course, it's been an exciting. The first round of play-ins already going through. We've lost so many teams along the way. What were your thoughts kind of on the group stage overall?
Yeah, honestly, it's been a surprising journey, especially for the teams playing today. But there's a little bit of sadness you'd have to imagine in the air that the Red Cannons didn't quite make it to the live finals here.
A little bit of sadness. The crowd were firmly behind them, but honestly, the crowd so far have been behind everybody. I think that may change up a bit now that TSM take to the stage, because we're getting into now round 2, the toughest stages. TSM, Flash Wolves, they come in. Now is the chance to qualify for MSI.
Yeah, very exciting to see who's going to make it through. But of course, if you want to participate in the MSI and during MSI only, you can unlock the 2017 MSI Conqueror bundle. With that bundle, you unlock a commemorative board skin, plus a border and an icon that's exclusive to MSI 2017. And with 25% of all those purchases being added to the MSI prize pool, Conqueror Karma is on sale now, so make sure to pick her up anytime between now and May 24th before she goes into the Legacy Vault to contribute to that prize pool to get yourself a 6 skin. Overall, great deal. But before we get into today's matchup, let's pull up the bracket and see what our week of games is going to look like and talk a little bit about that stakes. First, we have TSM facing off against the representative from the GPL, the Gigabyte Marines. Tomorrow, we see Turkey Supermassive looking to take down the Flash Wolves from the LMS.
And of course, the winners from these first 2 matchups of round 2 move directly into the MSI group stage. The losers will face one another with one last chance to get in on that final spot for the MSI groups.
Luxury of double elimination. Worry not, TSM fans. If you go down today, you will get another shot. Although we'll see. We'll turn our attention to that matchup
Already
right now.
firing shots.
As an EU caster, it's kind of ingrained in me. All right, well, it's TSM coming up first against Gigabyte Marines, and for TSM, they're coming in hot. They won that NALCS 5th title in a row, or not in a row, rather, 5th title overall. Fantastic performance.
And it wasn't hot during the split for TSM. That's the thing you have to remember. They finished reasonably dominant, but even in the finals, they were coming in a second fiddle to Cloud. They weren't exactly the standout performers, but then they showed up when it matters most, and namely, it speaks towards Hansa actually getting a lot better, where the rest of the team did still have some inconsistency. Yeah,
we've seen insane performances from the TSM solo laners. Bjergsen, obviously a titan worldwide, not just in NA, and Hansa really stepping up, making a name for himself, consistently a top performer in the NALCS.
And I think that's the interesting thing. You look at TSM, yes, strong solo laners, absolutely a benefit to them, but you look at the region they come from now. This is where MSI, the clash of all the different regions, really shows itself. It's like NA is regarded as one of the regions that do have a firmer grasp on strategy. So it's not only about those solo laners. You look at the way they implement coaching staff, the way they make plays on the map. Macro game is going to be a big strength for TSM as well.
Absolutely something they have to play for, look to take advantage of in this series, because today they're going to be going up against the Gigabyte Marines, who came into this tournament not only underestimated, but kind of underappreciated at first, but we saw that change very quickly in their first few games.
And it's kind of amusing that we did come into this tournament underestimating the Vietnamese side, right? Because they dominate in their own VCS league. They come into the GPL qualifiers against 5 other regions, I believe, and dominate that as well. Basically undefeated the whole way through to this tournament. They go 5-1. And I wouldn't even call that one defeat a genuine defeat, because they'd already qualified by that stage. They were just throwing themselves at everybody. So for what it's worth, underappreciating this team can prove to be a mistake.
And not only just before the games, but in games as well. A lot of teams were overlooking the decisive calls the Gigabyte Marines were making, just going for Baron or making set plays, like looking at teleport plays. Like everything was on a pretty high level for the GPL's Gigabyte Marines. And now you got to look at the individuals that we've been talking about, Levi, Optimus. They are one of the big sticking points for the Gigabyte Marines, but they match up against Svenskeren and Bjergsen. That's a scary duo to have to face in jungle and mid yourself.
Yeah, Levi going up against Svenskeren. This feels like a very intense jungle matchup. Now, of course, Svenskeren had a bit of an inconsistent split, but still very much a strong jungler overall. What are your guys' thoughts on that match?
Yeah, Svenskeren is one of the places when you look at TSM's roster that perhaps the Gigabyte Marines could attack, potentially exploit, and it comes towards the tendencies of Svenskeren as a jungler. He likes to invade. He's often found alone, caught in places where he has no right being, and that is because he's always invading. And against a jungler like Levi, He will punish you. He will, if nothing else, he will fight you for that area, that territory.
We've definitely seen him fight a whole lot. Now, it's interesting to me because we've seen these guys kind of take, to a certain degree, very similar champions overall. And I'm curious, are we going to see the jungle pool be very contested when it comes to fighting between these two teams?
I think you got to look at the Lee Sin, you got to look at the Graves, but there is one outlier that we haven't seen yet from Levi, and that's the Ivern. TSM have played it a number of times, and it is a champion that, you know, can scale later into the game. TSM playing maybe a slower game can look to scale up and not allow the snowball style that the Gigabyte Marines were showing to crush their opponents in round one of the MSI play-ins.
And of course, Ivern's just been an immensely popular pick throughout the tournament thus far, so it feels like it has to be high priority. Do you think there's any chance we're going to see Levi pick that up, or is this just something that the Gigabyte Marines need to ban away?
I think there's no chance we'll see Levi play it. It's just not his style as a player, right? He's an aggressive, kill-oriented jungler. He'll go from his red buff to the blue buff and then look for kills immediately. You compare that to Svenskeren, perhaps picking someone like Ivern for TSM actually tempers his aggression, because whilst you can invade, it's about taking the camps, not for fighting, and that could be ultimately where Svenskeren does go down. So a champion that TSM should look towards.
Well, as important as the jungle is, we kind of have to look at what lanes they're going to be affecting. And for me, the lane that we have to watch is that mid lane. Optimus going up against Bjergsen. Optimus, a legend in his own region. Bjergsen, it's the same story. I'm really curious to see how this one's going to
Oh, exactly. This is another one of these matchups where on paper there's so much that can differ, because Bjergsen, at least over the last year, has shown us a lot of different styles. It's not necessarily about Bjergsen carrying for himself. A lot of Talia in recent times too, so he can also go up, whether it's top lane or bot lane, try and get the other lanes going. But Optimus is going to struggle to get the same kind of leads, in my opinion, that he got against the other mid laners in the group stage of round one. Bjergsen just is a very solid laner, so difficult to put
Yeah,
it
and that's the key word, is solid. He's actually the most consistent player on this team, you'd think it's safe to say, right? The solo lane is the strengths on this team, but Hornser is more of the star power, and not to take away from Bjergsen being a star by any means, but he's just the rock. He'll never lose lane, and if Optimus actually manages to crack that shell, then TSM would be broken wide open.
Definitely a tough bet, though, to try to take down Bjergsen here on the stage. Now, we look at both these teams. Gigabyte Marines, maybe not the favorites in this series. If you're playing on their side, what are you going to do to try to take down TSM? What is the avenue to shutting down this team?
I think it's early aggression through their jungler. The first and biggest thing you have to do when you look at the draft and how that reflects that is try and get the Lee Sin, the Elise, or something like that for yourself, but also have a pushing mid lane, a pushing potentially top laner, or somewhere that can influence the map. You disregard bottom lane because that's what TSM's doing, and their win condition is usually on the top half of the map, and you try and beat them where you're strong. You don't play towards your own weaknesses.
That is difficult at the same time, though, when your enemy's strengths are like almost identical at that point, and you look at the top and bottom lane, which we are saying maybe not the strongest points for the Marines themselves. It might very well be tough. If you're so used to Levi and Optimus getting these massive leads, suddenly Svenskeren and Bjergsen aren't giving away a lot of deaths or, you know, any kind of lead. I want to see how the Marines react to an even-played game against a team that can hang with them on both an individual and a strategic level. That's why I think this is such an intriguing matchup between these two teams.
Very exciting. Of course, you can see the players now walking onto the stage, roar of the crowd for that reception. Has to feel good for both these guys. And of course, TSM chant. We had him in the EU final too. No matter where you go, you hear TSM chanted. But this time, it is the right time. It's TSM on stage, looking pretty confident.
And this is, you know, an important matchup for them. They didn't make it to MSI last year. It was CLG that came through. So at least for the organization, there's a little bit more on the line. Not only are you facing one of the quote-unquote emerging regions coming through here, this should be somewhat of a comfortable game. When you look at it region versus region, NA have always been known to at least qualify to the main stage, the groups of MSI, and typically have done well before.
But they have been known to lose to wildcard teams when it comes to these tournaments as well. So there's always going to be something playing on the minds of the NA region. Fortunately for CLG, they avoid losing to them as they're not going to be competing. TSM will be hungry to improve that.
Yes, definitely. And I think we can say that there is a ton of pressure on TSM, but also when we look at the two teams, we expect there to be a slight difference in the macro ability of TSM moving forward. Now, looking at TSM, is this kind of the opportunity for you to show something new? You've had a bunch of weeks to practice. You've had the opportunity to improve the team play even more than what we saw in the finals. What do we expect to see from them?
I actually have an expectation in the first game. It'll be the most standard thing that you'll see from TSM, right? This is the opportunity for the Gigabyte Marines to show a strategy, to try and cause an upset and actually force TSM to start at least revealing their hand. Because if you're TSM, you would actually be approaching this game like, yes, it's important. Yes, it gets me to MSI. But my crazy strategy should be saved for the Koreans, for the Europeans, for the Chinese, and and potentially LMS or Turkish teams that we'll be up against in the main event.
And to that point, we saw somewhat of a diversity of strategy from TSM through their playoff runs. It wasn't necessarily one comp that got them through. We saw differences in top lane, whether it was the Camille coming through. I think there's enough of champion pool depth for the team that in a best of 5, I think the Gigabyte Marines may very well take a game. Getting the Lee Sin, getting a strong mid laner, I think they could, but the adaptation that comes from that from TSM, I think, is what will be difficult to handle.
Yeah, that's the most important thing for TSM as a team. You have to have expectations that their adaptation in defeats would be way too good, and you have to have constantly bringing out new strategies, reinventing how you're playing the game.
Absolutely. Well, whether you're cheering for the GPL, NA, or any other region, make sure you show your support during the 2017 MSI Fandom Battle. You can participate with the 1 IP icon or the 250 RP icon
that got them through. We saw differences in top lane, whether it was the Camille coming through. I think there's enough of champion pool depth for the team that in a best of 5, I think the Gigabyte Marines may very well take a game. Getting the Lee Sin, getting a strong mid laner, I think they could, but the adaptation that comes from that from TSM, I think, is what will be difficult to handle.
Yeah, that's the most important thing for TSM as a team. You have to have expectations that their adaptation in defeats would be way too good, and you have to have constantly bringing out new strategies, reinventing how you're playing the game.
Absolutely. Well, whether you're cheering for the GPL, NA, or any other region, make sure you show your support during the 2017 MSI Fandom Battle. You can participate with the 1 IP icon or the 250 RP icon. Get yourself some sweet BM emotes for the game. Winners at the end of the tourney get an exclusive icon, and their region will get a 3-day IP boost. Now, in first place right now, CB Law coming in strong. Second place, LLN. Third place is the EU LCS. And over the course of the tournament, we will be checking on who's in the lead throughout the entire tournament. So tell your friends, 1 IP, get yourself an icon, have a great time. But of course, before we get into the match, let's send it over to a piece about how Optimus from the Gigabyte Marines got his start in the competitive scene.
Em chơi Liên Minh Thoại từ năm 2012 và ở thời điểm đó thì em cũng chỉ là đi chơi net để giải trí, nhưng mà dần dần thì em thấy mọi người trong cùng một quán internet họ chơi cùng với nhau và em cũng muốn là có những người chơi chung, nên em mới dần dần tìm sang là chơi chung với họ.
Anh ấy là một tuyển thủ tài năng, có nhiều kinh nghiệm và rất tự tin trong những pha xử lý của mình.
Optimus luôn tạo được sự tin tưởng cho đồng đội kể cả trong game lẫn ngoài đời.
Trong game thì là một cậu nhóc rất là nghiêm túc và luôn hướng tới chiến thắng của team lên hàng đầu. Ở ngoài đời thì hơi là cũng có một chút vui vẻ, nhưng mà cũng có một chút gì đó gọi là khó gần.
Ở GBL thì cũng nhiều, nhưng mà ở trên giải mà ở khu vực wildcard cũng như là thế giới thì em chưa, và wildcard thì em đây là lần đầu tiên.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first match. It's going to decide who advances to the MSI group stage. I'm Clayton Captain Flowers Reigns, and it is my distinct pleasure to cast for the first time alongside the unmatchable Andrew Vedius Day. How you doing, man?
I'm doing wonderful. Very excited to cast with the legend himself, Mr. Captain Flowers.
Legend for showing up during this split. Not exactly a legend yet, but we're looking on writing that story right now. But an even more important story that we've got to write is this match today. Before we get into Champion Select, though, we have to go through the rosters. On the blue side, it's TSM. With Haunser in the top lane, Svinskaren in the jungle, Bjergsen in middle, Wild Turtle bottom, Biofrost supporting, and Coach Park.
Meanwhile, their opponents on the red side of the Rift will be the Gigabyte Marines. Their top laner is Stark, jungler Levi, mid laner Optimus, AD carry Slay, their support Archie, and Coach Tinnican.
Now, Vedius, this is going to be the first time so far during MSI, during the play-in stage, that we get to see TSM take the stage. Gigabyte Marines, we've seen them over the course of the past week really get in there.
In terms of being able to force early plays, their drafting was very good, and just their ability to work as a team was just above and beyond what we were expecting.
Now, one thing that we have to keep in mind the entire time is sort of the conversation that's framed a lot of the discussion around many of these teams heading into the play-in stage, and that's the whole big fish in a small pond syndrome, right? how good, how adept are these guys as a team really when they're up against a higher level of competition, which is what they're going to be staring down the barrel of now that they've made it to round 2, now that they have to go up against a team like TSM. Can they compete? Can they hang in there and show, just like they did in round 1, where they might not have even been the stars of their group, but they stepped up and said, hey, you have to consider us. We're one of the guys that's going to be a big threat. Can they do that now against somebody like TSM?
Well, I hope so. I'd like them to bring it to TSM. I want a competitive series against these two teams, but I think TSM, they're looking to demonstrate their power here in this best of 5, and they want to go into the main event strong.
As TSM, you also have sort of a statement that you want to make in this, right? You, along with the team from the LMS, the Flash Wolves, these are the 2 regions that, despite being normally considered part of the Big 5, have been chosen to play through the play-in stage. They've got to earn their spot. They've got to say, yes, we deserve to be there. So coming out of this with a convincing 3-0 victory for TSM would be exactly the way that you want to say, look, we don't belong in play-ins, just send us to the main event next time.
Well, right now, they're doing it by showing their respect towards the Gigabyte Marines. Kennen is a champion that has been consistently banned against the Gigabyte Marines, largely because of its ability to be flexed between AD carry and top. Stark as an individual likes to play carry top laners. He likes to be in your face, and he likes to be able to make plays happen. The big champion for him that he's had a lot of success on is this Rumble, but Hauntzer is exactly the same, and they are on blue side. With Lulu being banned away, a champion that was picked in every single rotation, first time during the North American LCS Finals, I'm looking at this Rumble and wondering whether or not the Gigabyte Marines will allow it through.
And look at the respect being given to Levi as well. We talked about this guy on the Gigabyte Marines being their playmaker, being the guy who sets everything up and gets things going for them. Elise and Lee Sin both going to be taken off the table by TSM to make sure he's not on those early playmakers.
And then it makes you wonder, what's Levi going to work towards next, right? Because TSM, they always come to these international events with some new stuff, right? Like, sure, you might ban away a lot of the strong power picks, but I'm now looking, Ivern is left available, something that Svenskeren picked up a lot during the regular season. Graves as well is going to be up and available, and I feel like now if you're the Gigabyte Marines, you're looking at either rotating a Rumble and a Kha'Zix, or getting yourself a Rumble and a Karma, so that you guarantee a powerful bottom lane and a strong top half of the map.
TSM was very quick locking in that Graves for the jungle. Only took him about 5 seconds to say, you know, that's exactly what we want. We don't need to sit here. We don't need to think about it. That's the game plan. Gigabyte Marine's going to go ahead, pick up the Gragas for themselves first and foremost. Thinking now about that Karma to accompany it. Could be very powerful. I'll have to see if that's exactly what they want to go with here to start this draft off.
I am very surprised that the Gigabyte Marines would lock in that Gragas. You would expect it to be top lane. Stark did bring it out during the group stages. But it's one of those champions that it does reasonably well into the Rumble, therefore I would imagine that they are expecting it. But also, TSM have a tendency to draft their mid laner very early on during the draft as well. They want to make sure that Bjergsen is on a champion that he's comfortable and he knows he can win. And with champions like Syndra and Orianna also available, they may very well look to pick that up in this half of the draft.
TSM thinking about what they want to do here to address that Gragas and Karma that they've now seen picked up by the side of their opponents. Hovering over the Ashe. We've seen that be a very effective pick so far, and it looks like that's what they are going to be going with second in this draft. Now, do they want to lock in one of those mid laners like you might have suggested? Do they want to make sure that they get that going for Bjergsen now, or do they want to wait a little bit and see perhaps what the rest of the draft has in store?
Given that they are on blue side, they could look to just lock in their support right now. Or the top laner. We talked a lot about Rumble earlier on. Into the Gragas matchup, it is very fine. He still has the pushing power. He still trades very well. And it is one of Hauntzer's signature champions. During the North American Finals, it was banned in every single game against him. This guy is a proficient Rumble player, and you really cannot afford to allow him to have it at least within his own region.
And an interesting thing about taking that Rumble for Hauntzer as well, you keep it out of the hands of Stark, and when you look at the 6 games played by the Gigabyte Marines so far in MSI, half of those games were on Rumble. So denying that away from Stark is going to be big in its own right, as the Kha'Zix that you mentioned earlier does end up becoming the jungle pick for Levi.
So now with jungle, top, and support locked in, if you are the Gigabyte Marines, you're looking to take away some of the few supports that are left. Zyra is a likely contender, Thresh also being taken off the board, and if you're the TSM, then you start banning away champions like the Varus. You can also look to ban away. I wonder whether or not the Gigabyte Marines will go more towards something like the Caitlyn that they have. Brought out Slay, not really known for his mechanical proficiency, but more the brains behind the team. Very much the guy that sets up the plays and is very much about providing the utility and the support for the rest of his, for the rest of the lineup.
LeBlanc, the first ban coming out of TSM in the second half of the banning phase, looking towards that mid lane, seeing if they might be able to take a couple of tools out of Optimus's belt to make sure that he doesn't have those available to himself. Remember, what we heard from the analyst desk before this series started is that Levi and Optimus are kind of the two guys that make everything happen on the side of the Gigabyte Marines. They wanted to target Levi in the first half of the bans, now targeting Optimus in that second half to just remove power from both of those key players.
Game is very much the 1-3-1 from TSM and much more team fighting from the side of the Gigabyte Marines. Regardless, I think that we're seeing two compositions that very much exemplify the strengths that both teams have.
Going back to what we kind of heard the analysts talking about before this one, we want to see the Gigabyte Marines go for those early aggressive plays, that trademark style that we've seen them exhibit so far in MSI, in this play-in stage. Because this team is one that has made some really decisive moves, especially around power spikes, based around levels, based around items. This is a team that knows when they want to pull the trigger, and they just do it. On to Summoner's Rift for the first time in this best of 5, though. TSM coming out the gate, fanning out. Gigabyte Marines going to be doing the same thing. Everybody just drawing their point on that line of scrimmage across the river, making sure nothing too crazy happens here, level 1.
Listen to that crowd. They are just so excited to see TSM play up against the Gigabyte Marines. And the pressure will certainly be on. Gigabyte Marines considered to be the underdogs in this best of 5. And it is a best of 5, so there's plenty of opportunities to adapt and change up your style should you need to. But it is a very standard composition, I feel, from the Gigabyte. They have a powerful mid laner that has the push priority. They have it combined with Kha'Zix, who is a high damage, early dealing champion. And while in the bottom lane, you should struggle a little bit in terms of your ability to trade, but the moment Slay gets his Lost Chapter, it's just going to be push and push and push and push. And after that, I'm looking towards Gigabyte Marines trying to make a play down bottom. On the second day of Group B, that is where they get a lot of their leads, just making that map movement down, being able to take that structure very early on and then rotating Slay and Archie around the map and just gradually bleeding out their opponents.
It'll be interesting to see the difference between these two teams as well in terms of where they've been before this, right? You had the Gigabyte Marines playing the past week. TSM has had time for lots of preparation as Finscaren gets into enemy territory with Haunter and Bjergsen right next to him. Very early, trying to steal away one of those camps, but don't exactly get away with it. Now they're going to be turning the aggro right back onto him. Finscaren trying to flash away, but first blood over to Gigabyte Marines. TSM go too far forward.
TSM, they tried to contest the Raptors at level 1. They feel like they're going up against the Kha'Zix. They should be able to do it, especially with Haunter moving down. They didn't realize that Stark was sitting in the brush behind him, and now Haunter's trying to stop TSM from losing anything else.
Haunter wants to stop this, but he's quickly found himself in a pretty bad spot. Levi and Stark, a little bit more damage is what they're going to need to finish this one off. Blast Cone going to make sure he gets away from the Gragas.
He's going.
Levi still wants to chase after this one. He doesn't have the ability to get there, though. Void Spikes and Leap. He doesn't have the claw to make sure that he has enough damage during that fight to find the kill, but this is a very good start for the Gigabyte Marines.
Oh, it certainly is. And you can just see here, Levi gets the smite, which gives him a lot of health back, but it also gives him the level 2. He takes the leap to dive onto Svenskeren, and given that his flash is down, there's no way that he's going to escape this 3-man unit. Great first blood for the side of the Gigabyte Marines, and now they're off to the kind of start that you would want. Because when we talk about their playstyle, when we talk about this duo of Levi and Optimus being able to snowball an early lead, the fact that the first blood goes onto this Kha'Zix, he's going to get that early item spike, and he's going to have the ability to make more proactive plays in the first half of the game.
You can't ask for a much better start than wanting to start off at your chicken camp and just getting a first blood instead.
Yeah.
That's a phenomenal way to get out the gate here for Levi, but Svenskaren's doing a good job of moving into the enemy jungle, taking away those camps, making sure he doesn't fall behind from losing his jungle to Levi as well. The TSM jungler not going to be completely losing his footing in this game off of that start.
He's also showing a lot of respect as well, because note that bottom lane is pushing in favor of Team Solo mid, very much what you'd expect during the early levels of this Ashe Zyra bottom lane. Along with mid as well, Bjergsen, he was able to get a very early level 2, thanks to Optimus getting into lane later, which means that he too had the push over Optimus. So Svenskaren's invade was very safe, he knew they had the support from the rest of his team, and that means that he's now been able to catch up in terms of experience. But the gold advantage is still going to be sitting ever so slightly in Levi's favor.
Bjergsen versus Optimus here in this mid lane. Both mid laners taking exhaust in this match. Those still about a third of the time left on the cooldown, 70 seconds or so before they come back up. Levi taking the blast cone over the wall.
Flash.
See if he can find the chance to go on to Haunter here, who has no way out of this one. Start getting in a couple more auto attacks, and Levi cuts him down. Make this a 2-0 game for the Gigabyte Marines.
And this was Levi not even going back to base. He took advantage of the blast cone. The ward literally just ran out as he jumps over the wall. And Haunter, playing Grumble, he pushes in hard. There's nothing he can really do about it. As we see now Optimus being forced back in the middle lane. High octane action very early on into this game. But Svenskeren, he's still doing well in terms of experience. He's still punishing Levi wherever he sees an opportunity.
Which is exactly what you want to see coming out of that Graves, right? Graves might not be the best active ganking champion early on in the game, but when you see somebody show up, you know you can go steal those camps very effectively. You're very difficult to actually, not very difficult, but you're very tanky against those jungle camps.
You certainly are, yeah.
Kite them around, make sure that you keep yourself nice and topped off, and if somebody tries to come fight you, guy's a hell of a duelist.
And his wave clear is just extremely strong as well, right? So you just rip through those camps, and now Levi, he's still doing absolutely fine though. He's currently got a longsword advantage over his jungle counterpart. Svenskeren will primarily just invest in farming and vision, picking himself up the early tracker's knife, maintaining control over the top half of the river is now going to be very important for him, because Stark, he can set up this wave so the Haunter's going to be forced to overextend. He's going to need the support of his jungler to be able to force it underneath the tower in order to reset the wave and be able to get some experience, because Stark, he's going for the Fellowship build, he's feeling pretty confident, and he's going to be able to trade pretty effectively and get the level 6 mark well before Haunter will.
You can see Levi still hanging around up here. Level 5 on the Kha'Zix. Not really too close to level 6 just yet, so still a ways away from that first evolution. Both mid laners also going to be nearing on that level 6 point soon, but that means a lot more for Optimus than it does for Bjergsen, of course, because it will unlock the ultimate potential, that point and click to delete that Syndra is so notorious for. Levi wanting to work his way up into this top lane brush to get a sort of surprise factor off, but just out of Fog of War, he's going to go ahead and recall.
I love this proactivity from Levi, the fact that he's still staying ahead in farm of Svenskeren, but he's always looking for opportunities to ganks. He knows the advantage that he has, and he wants to try and push it onto TSM. This is the sort of play that you need to be taking to TSM. You can't play scared, you can't play reserved, you can't be showing too much respect. And I love the proactivity that we are seeing from the Vietnamese squad.
Yeah, you want to see that kind of bravery. You don't want to see a team sort of psych itself out saying, okay, we're playing against TSM. This is a higher quality team than what we've had to play against so far in terms of other smaller regions. We got to make sure that we tone it back a little bit. You got to stay true to your own style. You've got to play the kind of League of Legends that gives you a win, which is what the Gigabyte Marines are trying to do right now. And TSM, I saw a tweet from Bjergsen the other day where he was talking about how the team is just eating, breathing, and sleeping League of Legends right now, trying to put on the best possible performance they can for their fans and their region and everybody here at MSI. As Bjergsen going to take a little bit of damage here, but too ham on him unless you know you're going to find that kill.
And bear in mind, that invade from TSM wasn't necessarily the wrong decision. it was just a decision that you have to be very mindful of, right? If Svenskeren gets the smite, he gets level 2, and then that goes very differently. And now bear in mind down the bottom lane.
Oh! Slay grabbing the kill onto Wild Turtle before we even see what's going on. Just takes him out of the picture. Both summoner spells also going to be expended by the TSM AD carry as Levi grabs a killing spree up here in the 2v2. Optimus going to be in some danger. Bjergsen's able to pick him up. Levi failing before he can do anything else. There's not really any opportunity to clean that one up at all. But action across the map.
Gigabyte Marines, they're just coming out the gate swinging. They're able to get themselves a 2v2 kill down bot. Now let's see exactly how it happens. Wild Turtle, oh man, that is very aggressive. That is not how you want to be positioning against Slay and Archie. Severe disrespect to the bottom lane of the Gigabyte Marines. And now we see both Optimus and Levi just getting a pick onto Svenskeren. They set up the ward over the wall, knowing that the blue buff had just spawned. They felt that TSM would make that map move, and I think the real target was Bjergsen, but instead they find themselves an easy jungle picking. While it does end up being a 1-for-1, Gigabyte Marines extend their gold lead even further.
And you know, that's one of the criticisms you commonly hear for Wild Turtle as a player, is he gets too aggressive. He tries to make too many plays, his positioning is too far forward. And right there, the respect that he didn't show to Slay and Archie, just putting himself in a spot where he was able to be juggled around and bursted down like that. Can't make those kind of mistakes.
Oh, no, you cannot. That is going to hurt them so much. Because think about Slay, how early now he's going to be able to get that Morellonomicon. This is a bottom lane that's just wanting to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And if you sacrifice that kind of gold this early on, it means that Gigabyte Marines are well set up to be able to take that early tower bottom and then start moving around the map.
Svenskeren wants to steal away this blue buff for the second time if he can. Levi already got his twice, but Levi actually makes sure he's the one grabbing the smite onto that. Stranglethorn's going to be used to keep Archie and Slay away from collapse.